أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. First and foremost, congratulations to all of you brothers and sisters in Islam and to all of the Muslims throughout the world on this arrival of Eid al-Fitr. May Allah accept our a'mal and our prayers and our fasting and give us the tawfiq to achieve the objective of the holy month of Ramadan and its fast, which is the attaining of taqwa for the purpose of Allah's pleasure. Again, congratulations to everyone and Eid Mubarak. Secondly, being that it's the night of Eid, therefore, we will try to keep our discussion very brief and hopefully, as Sayyid Atiq mentioned, that the programs will continue, and if I'm not mistaken, IMC Philly every Thursday night with Dua Kumail. They also have a program online until things improve and the programs can be held in person within the respected centers throughout the states. So our discussion has reached to this point in relation to Hadith that we want to talk about some of the important books and collections of Hadith. As I mentioned previously several times, amongst the Shias, there are very important books of Hadith, but from the most reliable ones, or the ones that are considered most reliable and authentic, are known as Kutubul Arba'a, the four books, by namely Al-Kafi, من لا يحضره الفقيه, تهذيب الأحكام, and Al-Istibsar. And we said amongst the Sunnis, there are 6 books that hold this kind of title, known as Sahahu Sitta, Bukhari, Muslim, Ibn Majah, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, and Nasa'i. However, there is discussion among some ulama of Ahlul Sunnah whether Nasa'i is an authentic collection of hadith and it should be included in these 6 books or not. So therefore, some of them have included Malik's Muwatta as the collection instead of Sunan and Nasa'i. But amongst these books, the most important ones in the Sunni academic world and amongst the Sunni Muslims is clearly Bukhari and Muslim. Prior to talking about the significance and how we should approach Bukhari and Muslim, let us turn back to the books of Hadith amongst the Shia Muslims, this Kutubul Arba'a. So clearly, the Kutubul Arba'a are not the only books of Hadith, collection of Hadith. These are, again, what is considered the 4 most authentic amongst the ulama. However, there are other books, for instance, Al-Khilaf, Wasa'il al-Shi'a, Mustadrak al-Wasa'il al-Shi'a, Bihar al-Anwar, Al-Wafi, and even more important, Nahjul Balagha. However, Nahjul Balagha holds a very special position in relation to these books of Hadith, and we will mention some points about Nahjul Balagha. However, prior to doing so, the question comes up is, did these books of Hadith exist during the time of our Imams? And we said no. Kulaini, which is the earliest, was after, towards the end of Ghaibatul Sughra and the beginning of Ghaibatul Kubra. He lived in that period, as well as Sheikh Sadduq, who's another author of these 4 books. However, books of Hadith existed amongst the Shia during the time of our Imams, as early as the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And these 4 authentic books are derived from those books. And those books are known as Usulu Arba'ami'a. That Usulul Arba'ami'a, they are 400 collection and books of Hadith known as Usul, which is the plural of Asl. So there's 400 Asl. What is this Usul? In relation to this, they're called Usul because they are the primary sources of Hadith. There were more than 400, but 400 of them were authentic and reliable and existed and were started, collection of it was started during the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, up until the time of Imam Askari alayhi salam, the 11th Imam. And the majority of them were written and collected during the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So each usul had a specific author. There were more than 400, we said, but these usulul arba'a mi'a, these 400 primary sources, were what were considered reliable, and each one had a different author. And many of them were written in front of the Imams. What does that mean? For instance, it's related that the companions of Imam Qadim alayhi salam, our 7th Imam, his students would come with pen and paper. And whatever Imam Sadiq alayhi salam stated, they would write them down. So our existing books of Hadith have their source in these usulul arba'ah, these 400 sources. And all of them were not Shias, the authors of these 400. But all of the people who wrote them were considered trustworthy, even if their madhab was not the madhab of Shia Ithna Ashari, and some of the authors were not Shia, but they were trustworthy individuals. And even during the times of the Imams signed off on these 400, the total of it, which is 400. So those Kutubul Arba'at, those 4 reliable books that we have, are a compilation and derived from these 400 usul. The difference is that in those 400 usuls, there was no specific order in the writing of the hadith. There was no specific chapter or subject. It was just written as they heard it. So either the person in front of the imam or after they heard it from the imam and the ma'soom, they would go back to their home and they would write down the hadith that they heard. So, but what the 3 authors of these 4 books did is that they took all of these collections from all of these 400 and they categorized it. For instance, Al-Kafi has 3 categories. One part is Usulul Kafi, which talks about Aqa'id, Iman, and these matters, Tawheed, and the like. Then the second part is called Furu' Al-Kafi. This Furu' Al-Kafi talks about Ahkam completely. Every volume of Furu' Al-Kafi, which is consists of more volumes than the other parts, talks about Ahkam, all of the hadith that were, for instance, about Salah, about fasting, about Hajj, about Khums, about Zakat, about marriage, about foods, about drinks. In specific categories, the author has categorized them, organized them, and compiled them in Furu al-Kafi. Very organized and useful manner. It's a huge task in of itself. And then whatever is mutafarriqat, various topics. He has, for instance, things about the Quran, the rewards for reciting the Quran, things about akhlaq and Islamic ethics and morality and such matters. He has compiled them in Rawda al-Kafi. So just this al-Kafi has been divided into 3 books: Usul, Furu, Rawda, and then each of these books have been compiled into different topics and subjects. The Usulul Arba'a were not like this. So that's one point about the source of the ahadith from the school of Ahlul Bayt, that they were written and recorded during the time of our imams in these collections that are known as usul, but these kutub al-arba'a were written after the time of the 11th imam. And then even some of them were written either towards the end of Ghaibatul Sughra or the beginning of Ghaibatul Kubra. But when we come to the Nahjul Balagha, which some of the great scholars have called Akhul Quran, the brother of the Quran. Nahjul Balagha is recorded by the great famous scholar Muhammad ibn Husayn ibn Musa al-Musawi, from the offsprings of Imam Kadhim, our 7th Imam, and he is famous by the name of Sayyid Radhi or Sharif al-Radhi. So the Sayyid Radhi, who lived in the 4th century of Hijrah, from the year 359 Hijri to the year 406 Hijri, and he died at a young age. But in spite of his short life, he had become one of the most famous and respected ulama amongst the Muslims, period, not just amongst the Shias, especially for his eloquence and his poetry. Sayyid Radhi is highly revealed in the Arab world. Shias and non-Shias alike have testified to his eloquence and the power of his speech and tongue, his poetry, and his pen. And as you know, someone who has these qualities is very important in Arabic society and a Muslim society as well, but especially amongst the Arabs, especially back in those days, it held more greater importance than it even does now, although it does not lack importance now as well. So the Sayyid Radhi, he is the one who compiled Nahjul Balagha, and at his disposal were very huge libraries. One of the libraries that is belonged to his brother apparently contained over 80,000 books. And the other libraries that existed at that time in Baghdad, where he is from, which was the capital of Islam and which was the capital of the world. At that time, Baghdad was the most advanced city in the world. And Sayyid Radhi, who was born in Baghdad and who lived in Baghdad and died in Baghdad and is buried in the Baghdad next to the shrine of the 7th and near the shrine of the 7th and 9th Imams. He compiled Nahjul Balagha from all of the different sources that he had, from the sayings of Imam Ali alayhi salam. And in the beginning of the Nahjul Balagha himself, he talks about why he compiled it. However, this Nahjul Balagha consists of 3 sections. One of the sections is the sermons of Imam Ali alayhi salam, which includes 239 sermon speeches of Imam Ali alayhi salam. from during the time of his Khilafah and prior to that as well. And it contains 79 letters, which he sent to his governors and others. And it contains 480 short sayings or proverbs. However, the way that Sayyid Radhi collected these is that he took the most eloquent parts of the sermons and the letters and the hikam of Imam Ali alayhi salam and included it in this Nahjul Balagha. So the complete sermon or the complete letter or the complete short saying and proverb is not included. His intent, and for this reason, he called it Nahjul Balagha. Nahj is the clear path of eloquence. And they have translated into English as the peak of eloquence, for instance. And this Nahjul Balagha has been translated into many languages. However, it's not the entirety, because even as you see when you read Nahjul Balagha, he himself writes, Al-Mukhtaru min Khutab. So what is chosen out of this khutbah? Al-Mukhtaru min al-Kutub. What is chosen from this kitab meaning letter. Al-Mukhtaru min al-Hikam. Hikam is the plural of hikmah or proverbs in the short saying, what he chose. So those that he found the most authentic parts of the most eloquent parts of Amir al-Mu'mineen's speech, he collected those and he put them in Nahjul Balagha, which is a very important book, contains teachings in from all aspects of Islam and human life. It has discussions surrounding everything, from i'tiqadat to ahkam, to social matters, to political matters, to war and peace and akhlaq and dua, every aspect of Islam and human life, the Nahjul Balagha talks about. And Nahjul Balagha is a very respected book in the Islamic world. Number one, whoever reads it has no doubt that this book is authentic because of its wording and its content. Even to the point that famous Sunni scholars wrote commentaries about the Nahjul Balagha, and they said that this speech is lesser than the speech of the Khaliq, the creator, but it is greater than the speech of the Makhluk, the creation. It's lesser than Allah's speech, but it's greater than all of the makhlukat of Allah's speech, except the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. They have praised it and described it in this manner. And some of the most famous commentators of Nahjul Balagha are ulama of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So at any rate, along with translations and commentaries about Nahjul Balagha, what also has been written about it are books talking about the sources of Nahjul Balagha, because Sayyid Radhi did not include the chain of narrators in this book of his. But even without the chain of narrators, the text, the contents are so powerful that anyone without any prejudice can recognize that only Imam Ali alayhi salam can make this kind of statement. For instance, there's a khutbah in Nahjul Balagha that does not have any dots. Imam Ali made a speech, and gave a sermon using the Arabic language with only words from letters that do not have any dots. Can you imagine how difficult it is? Almost half of the Arabic alphabet has dots. Ba, ta, tha, jim, kha, za, dal. Keep on going. How many of them? Sheen, ya, they have dots in them. Without all of these important letters, Imam Ali alayhi salam delivered a lecture with no dots. And in addition to that, he has another sermon where he doesn't use the letter alif or hamza, perhaps the most used letter in the Arabic language. He has a sermon without alif. When we examine Nahj al-Balagha, subhanallah, the contents of it take us to a whole new world. It takes us on a spiritual and intellectual journey unlike any other except the Quran. But Sayyid Radi, we said, did not include the sources. Other ulama have written books about the sources of Nahj al-Balagha, or they have written books in completion of Nahj al-Balagha, because Sayyid Radi didn't include all of the speeches and letters and sayings that were available. He picked a certain amount of numbers. We said 239, 79, and 480, but many more existed. Over 400 something sermons of Imam Ali alayhi salam existed. So some of the ulama have written what is called Mustadrak of Nahj al-Balagha, where they complete what Sayyid Radi has left out in it. But in spite of all of that, Nahj al-Balagha is madloom, just like Amir al-Mu'mineen was madloom. The same way that the Muslims abandoned Ali, we have abandoned Nahj al-Balagha. Some of us, we may own a print and it may be in our homes, but how many of us actually do pick it up and read it? Someone asked the question that, are there any books of hadith, like the Sunnis, they will take Bukhari, they'll take Muslim and the like, and they'll open it up and they will read it. But Shias, we don't have this habit. So the question is there any books of hadith that we can take and read like we read the Quran or other books? If there was any book of hadith that we can approach this way, is Nahj al-Balagha. And also next to it, Sahifa Sajjadiyah, the book of du'as compiled from the du'as of our fourth Imam, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. They're both two very authentic collections of the sayings of a ma'asum, but unfortunately, we don't give them that much importance and significance. So if we are to read next to the Quran a book of hadith, then it should be Nahj al-Balagha and Sahifa Sajjadiyah. The next point is pertaining about the Sahah or Sittah. And this discussion is very important. However, I'm unsure. Should I continue this discussion, being that it's the night of Eid and everyone, I'm sure, wants to spend time with their families and they want to enjoy the fruits of their labors during the holy month of Ramadan and benefit from the night of Eid, and leave this discussion for some other time, or to say it, to have this discussion and inshallah, not leave it for another time. So I left it to the Quran, inshallah. We will leave it off for some other time. If I have the tawfiq, maybe in one of these Thursday night sessions or so forth, we can continue our discussion on Islamic narrations and hadith. But I should mention again some points about Eid very quickly. So the Zakatul Fitr is $10. Alhamdulillah, IMC Philly has agreed that they can collect the Zakatul Fitr. The link is on their website, and inshallah, Maulana Sayyid Atiq will announce the details himself. The Zakatul Fitr is $10, but if you donate, or I shouldn't say donate, it's a responsibility. We have to give this. If you decide to pay it through this link, there will be a certain percentage that the banks will charge. So my recommendation is to pay $10.50. There's no limit to paying Zakatul Fitr. The minimum is $10. If you want to pay $100, then the reward is even more, but $10.50. Fidya is $2, so also please add a little extra for the fee. And kafara is $120. And again, if you want to pay that as well, add a little extra for the fee. If I'm not mistaken, the fee is about 3% that they will charge, the banks charge. So $10.50, inshallah. And they will do a good job, inshallah, give it to reliable sources that will distribute it to those that it belongs to and whose right it is upon us. Secondly, the Zakatul Fitr is wajib for those who are able. So the completion and accepting of the fasting of the holy month of Ramadan, the entirety, is dependent on that $10 or $10.50, as we said in our case. It's dependent on that. And it's wajib for every member of the family, those who are fasting or those who could not fast, either because of age or illness or whatnot, traveling, the zakat al-fitr, whoever is able must pay. And it's on the head of the household. But some households that, you know, they're independent, everybody can chip in and pay their own and whatnot. The next matter is, inshallah, pertaining about Salatul Eid. Again, as a reminder, Salatul Eid is mustahab at this time because the Imam is in ghaiba. And it can be performed 2 rakats, like the Fajr prayer. You don't even have to do the qunut. But if you decide to do the qunut, you can do it from your phone, your piece of paper, and follow the instructions that are in the books of Islamic laws or the books of du'as or websites that have them available. There's no special surah. You can read any surah of the Quran after Surah Al-Fatiha, although Surah A'la and Surah Shams is good to read, but it's not required to read with Salatul Eid, and it doesn't require the 2 sermons afterwards. That is only when it's done in Jama'ah. So inshallah, may Allah bless all of you brothers and sisters and all of the Muslims and the good human beings out there on this blessed Eve and night of Eid and the day of Eid. And it shouldn't go without notice that one of the nights that's used for ihya, that a believing mu'min keeps vigil and worships Allah, is this night of Eid. The night of the 1st of Shawwal, narration state that it is no less than Laylatul Qadr. So it's a very blessed night, a night of dua, a night of doing good deeds and remembering Allah, a night of recitation of Quran, and a night of contemplation and thinking, and also, of course, a night of reaching out and a day of reaching out to the believers, our families, our loved ones, and showing them kindness and greetings. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
A very quick question. The $10 is $10 per person or $10 per family, so that everyone in the family can chip in and complete the $10?
No, it's $10 per person. It's the minimum is $10 per person.
So $10 for every person in the household, or $10 for every person for whom it was obligatory to fast?
For every person in the household, even if it's a newborn, if it's born, the child is born on the eve of Eid, it becomes obligatory.
And someone has asked, someone asks, how does a person know if they are required to pay the zakat al-fitr rather than receive it?
So zakat al-fitr is for those Muslims who are considered faqir or miskin. So faqir is someone who does not have the expenses, the daily expenses of their entire year. They don't meet it. So even if your expenses are, say, for the entire year, 30,000, and your income is 29,000, 25,000. So your income is less than what your actual expenses are. This is called faqir, and miskin is somebody who is in a worse off financial situation. So everybody has to calculate themselves that if their income does not meet their required expenses. That doesn't include like vacation and extra things that we want to have. It includes the very basic things, shelter and food and the like. So that's a faqir. And everyone who doesn't fit in that category, the zakat al-fitr, they have to pay and they cannot receive.
Another question comes up. Is there a difference between for the one receiving and for the one giving when it comes to someone being of Sayyid lineage or someone who is not of Sayyid lineage?
Ahsan, this is a point that we should have referred to earlier as well. The fitr of Sadat goes to Sadat, and fitr of non-Sayyid lineage goes to non-Sayyid lineage. So that should be also a reminder that if when you donate, I'm sorry again for misuse of the word, when you pay this Islamic requirement, zakatul fitr, that you should also mention in it that this is from Sadat or non-Sadat. So Sayyid or non-Sayyid, that this is zakatul fitr from Sayyid or non-Sayyid.
Jazakallah, Sayyid. So we have a couple other questions. One says, first they say, Assalamu alaikum. They say, as the Sayyid said that if we have kafara that we should pay, I want to know if you could very quickly, because they may have missed the explanation of for what reason should a person have to pay kafara.
Yes, so if we have kafara, it's wajib, or if we have fidya, it's wajib. Fidya is when we have a legitimate excuse to miss the fasting, like illness. And kafara is for when we don't have a legitimate excuse, we commit a sin by breaking the fast. And that is the equivalent of a meal for 60 people. So in dollars, it would be $120 per day that we inexcusably broke a fast or didn't fast on one of the days of Ramadan. But fidya, if we have an excuse, it's just $2.
So just to be very clear, so if I'm doing the calculation and if someone was sick for the entire month of Ramadan and they're not able to make up the fast later, they will pay the fidya. So for that month, it will be $60.
Yes, $60.
Okay. So the fidya is $2. The zakat al-fitr is $10 per person, and then the kafara is
$120.
$120. The fidya times 60. Okay.
Yeah.
Inshallah. Okay, someone has just asked, can you tell me again about the $60? I misunderstood. If you could explain that, what that was for, please.
So if somebody doesn't fast the entire month of Ramadan because they're sick and they have a legitimate excuse, or for instance, it's a pregnant mother or one who's breastfeeding and they feel like the fasting will bring harm to the mother or the child, for every day they have to pay fidya. And fidya, its equivalent in dollars is $2. So for every day that they missed, 1 month, 30 days, it becomes $60. But if somebody say missed 2 days because of sickness, or a week because of sickness, then it would be $4 or $14. So if they miss the entire month, it's $60, $2 each day. So we calculate $2 for the fidya for every day.
Jazakallah, Sayyid. So just in case someone else has another question, I'm going to ask a question about the topic of discussion about hadith. And this is something that's on a lot of people's minds, that if we have collections of hadith and we have rules for how to determine which one is authentic and inauthentic, and if there are certain narrations that are so weak and so widely accepted as being weak, then why aren't they simply removed from the books of narrations to make it easier for us?
So this is a good question, but the thing is that the books are already compiled. It's unjust, and it's not an act of amana and trustworthiness that we should change books that already exist. If we start doing this, then there's no stopping it. There's no preventing it. Actually, one of the issues that we have, and I wanted to mention in relation to, for instance, Sahih Sitta, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and books like that, is that there are certain individuals, like for instance in Saudi Arabia, that are using petrodollars to change these books, to take out hadith which they consider inauthentic. It's not universally inauthentic, or change or remove sentences from these books. And the other danger is that the old manuscripts that exist, they're trying to collect those and destroy them, so that all remains is their version of Bukhari. But that's not the version that the author wrote. So in order to be just and true to the author and the books themselves, we should not and we cannot remove things out of them. It's very simple for us, for instance, to write a book in relation to that book, to say, well, okay, this is the conclusion, this is the compilation of all of the authentic books in this collection. It's not a just, reliable, truthful approach, trustworthy approach to start taking things out of books and adding things to the books. That is the job of the author. If the author decided to edit it, revise it, she has every right to do so. But for other people, it's a very dangerous rabbit hole that we need to, as they say, it's opening up Pandora's box, the saying goes. It can lead to many things, and there are efforts today, right now, to change books around. So generations in the future won't have understanding of what's the actual hadith. And this is where fabrications and the issue comes up. And this issue is huge, for instance, in the Christian world in relation to the Bible and the collections of the Gospels as well. There's different versions that come out with things added, things changed, things removed. We can't have that in these books.
We'll ask the one about the fasting first and the fidya and zakat al-fitr, because the follow-up question, it says, it's about that $60 again. They just need some more clarification because it's a specific situation. They're asking, they say, I have a son who is 13 years old and he missed 2 days because he had a tournament. He played the first day while fasting, but he broke it after half a day because he was so thirsty. Then he didn't fast on the second day because he had a tournament on that day as well. What is the rule for him? And there's no problem with asking a lot of questions. It's all right.
No,
They apologize for asking a lot of questions. So.
No, it's no problem. No problem at all. So 13, the age for boys for where they become mukallaf, that they have to follow the rules and so forth, is 15 lunar years, which, if I'm not mistaken, is about 14 and a half or so solar years. So fasting for them is good, inshallah. But if they broke it, then there's no fidya or kafara for them. If they want to do so from, just being cautious or something, there's nothing to prevent that either. But since they're not mukallaf, it's not required.
Since we're on this topic, is there a situation where a brother or a sister would be responsible for fasting and praying before that age, like before the age of 15? Or does it have to be exactly the age of 15 lunar years?
No, it should. They can if there's discussion amongst the ulama that if some people may reach that age of puberty and taklif, where they become responsible before the laws of Islam prior to that age. But that's a judgment call. If we see that they meet all of the conditions of what they call bulugh and puberty, then for someone like that, then they would be considered mukallaf. However, generally speaking, it's that 14 and a half solar, 15 lunar years.
Jazakallah, Sayyid. We have another question. I think you alluded to this during the discussion, but if you could quickly reiterate it. They're asking, did Sheikh Al-Kulaini have interactions with the Imam alayhi salam either directly or through the representatives of the Imam alayhi salam? If you could address that again, just maybe a few people, they arrived a little bit late and could have missed it.
So we said that Sheikh Kulaini Zahiran was towards the end of Ghaibatul Sughra. I know if he did have interactions with the Imam, then it was the special type of interactions that only certain believers have the tawfiq of during the time of Ghaiba. However, if I'm not mistaken, there are accounts of him having interactions with special representatives of the Imam alayhi salam.
Jazakallah. And we have one more question. This question asks, can you please tell us some examples of scholarly commentaries of Kutub al-Arba'a where they authenticate the narrations, essentially a Sahih al-Kafi by so-and-so, for example, where they would take the narrations from al-Kafi and compile just the ones that they authenticate and consider as correct. An example comes to mind is Alama Majlisi Sharh al-Kafi. Are there other such examples?
So there's a lot of examples of sharh or commentaries written about al-Kafi or Kutub al-Arba'a as well. However, they go into the details of the hadith. It's in reality, it's just not a sharh of al-Kafi as a whole, like a book study or a report on the book, that what the book and the author, who it is. There's some discussion of that, but rather they talk about the hadith itself. There is a good book that has been recently written, Majma' al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara, by the late marhum Ayatollah Mohseni, where he, based on his principles of ilm al-rijal, he collects all the books, all the authentic narrations that are in the books of the Shias, for instance, like in Bihar. So it's in 8 volumes, Majma' al-Ahadith al-Mu'tabara. So Alama Majlisi, other ulama have written shuruh of al-Kafi. Right now it slips my mind some of the titles and some of the ulama. But again, these shuruh are written for the scholars and people who have a scholarly background, for us to go and to read these, especially with the fact that most of them are in Arabic. And for us to go and to look into these commentaries, it's not really that fruitful. It's better if we stay with the books such as that are written by scholars like Allama Tabatabai, Shahid Mutahari, Shahid Sadr, and great scholars of present day who wrote these books for people to understand. So they brought the hadith and they explained it. Also, there's a lot of books that are written called Arba'ina Hadith, or 40 Hadith. Like, for instance, there's one by Imam Khomeini, which is a very nice book, and it's translated into English, or other people. So these ulama have taken the effort to authenticate these hadith, and then they've come and then they've explained the hadith itself. So every aspect of what the hadith is teaching us. So for instance, there is for Sharh Usul al-Kafi, Mullah Sadra has written a Sharh Usul al-Kafi. Sadruddin al-Shirazi, Mullah Sadra, known as Mullah Sadra, the famous Mullah Sadra philosopher. There's Sharh al-Kafi by Mullah Saleh Mazandarani. There's, for instance, contemporary by Muhammad Mu'min Gilani. There's also a Hashia, which is like a Sharh ala Usul al-Kafi by Mullah Muhammad Amin Astarabadi, as well as other scholars who have written shuruh on al-Kafi. So the one by Mullah Saleh Mazandarani is a highly touted one as well. There is some in Farsi as well. So there's one in Farsi, Darakhshan Partuye as Usul Kafi, from Sayyid Muhammad Husseini Hamadani. But in English, there's an effort to translate al-Kafi that has been going on. The Sheikh who's spearheading it, Sheikh Rizwan Arasto, a very good Sheikh, good brother. I've had the honor of meeting with him a few times and so forth, and he's known for his hard work and his piety. However, at the end of the day, it's good to a certain degree that we approach these books like that. But if we want to really approach them, these are books that are necessary. These are books that require a lot more steps prior to that. So, you know, we can't just jump on the first step. These are towards the upper stairs of the second floor. We have to take the prior steps that are required to that. And that's a good basic training in Hawza studies.
Inshallah. So we'll say Eid Mubarak once again. Sayyid, thank you. Please let us end this month of Ramadan, inshallah, with your dua, iltimas dua.
Jazakumullahu khairal jaza. Thank you so much for your kind words, and may Allah accept all of the efforts that you put in place to have such wonderful, well-organized programs. May Allah reward you and increase your tawfiqat. We also know that it takes a lot of work, and alhamdulillah, from all of the different programs that I've done throughout this holy month, the ones here with IMC Philly, alhamdulillah, were the most organized, and their flow was very nice. May Allah reward you again for all of your efforts, and all of the mu'mineen for their participation as well, and their kind words and their du'as, and to please also continue to remember us in their du'as as well. Even though I am no one to do du'a, but inshallah by the barakat of your ameen, may Allah accept our du'as. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma أدخل على أهل القبور السرور اللهم أغني كل فقير اللهم اشف كل جائع اللهم اكس كل أريان اللهم اقض كل مدين اللهم فرج عن كل مكروب اللهم رد كل غريب اللهم فك كل أسير اللهم أصلح كل فاسد من أمور المسلمين اللهم اشف كل مريض اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك اللهم اقض عنا الدين واغننا من الفقر انك على كل شيء قدير اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توأا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Oh Allah, we ask of you by this great night of Eid and the holy month of Ramadan, and your Asma al-Husna and 14 infallibles and the Holy Quran, that you accept our a'mal and our fasting throughout this holy month, and you make this blessed day of Eid full of blessings and wellness for all of the Muslims and the good human beings of the world, and that you give us increase in our iman and protect our iman, especially to the iman of our children, and most importantly, to hasten the return of Imam Zaman alayhi salam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.